Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, really depending on where you're joining us from, but welcome. And my name is Sandra Rodriguez, and I'm joined today by my amazing colleague, Jenna Kress. And we're both members of the Restorative Justice Project team at Impact Justice, and we'll be your panel facilitators for today's incredible discussion. Jenna and I are so grateful to be joined today by Terrancé Akins and Jan Berger for a conversation on restorative justice and how it relates to intergenerational healing. Unfortunately, we won't be joined this morning by Dr. John Lloyd, but as you all are about to hear, we're in quite incredible company nonetheless. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jenna to begin to introduce us to our amazing panelists.
So first we have Terrancé Akins, who is a community reformer and activist. He advocates strongly for restorative justice and human evolution for the underserved population. His heart is for enriching and empowering the youth through youth life coaching to discover their greatness and take their place in history. Driven by his faith, his mission is to make a generational difference. So we're super excited to have Terrancé here with us, and I'll pass it over to you, Sandra, to introduce Jan.
Thanks, Jenna. Jan Berger is the Community Manager for Community Healing Network, otherwise known as CHN. Community Healing Network is leading the global grassroots movement for emotional emancipation to end the centuries-old association between Blackness and inferiority, and to restore the rightful association between Blackness and humanity. Among other responsibilities, Jan leads CHN's weekly virtual emotional lunch breaks to provide a place for respite and refreshment from the daily stresses of anti-Blackness. She also leads CHN's quarterly Emotional Emancipation Circle 101 intensives designed to mobilize Black people to heal from and extinguish the lie of white superiority and Black inferiority, the root cause of the devaluing of Black lives and the underdevelopment of Black communities around the world. So welcome, Jan, and welcome again, Terrancé. We're so happy that you all are joining us today, and I'm so excited about this conversation. Pass it back to you, Jenna.
So before we get into the conversation a little bit further, we want to give a moment to give space and honor the original caretakers of the land that Sandra and I are calling from, which is the Ohlone, Muwekma, Coastal Miwok, and Pomo people. And we are going to put the link into the chat for an app called Native Land Digital. And we really invite everyone, if you are not familiar with the native land that you are on, to look at that map, take some time to learn about the original caretakers of the land that you all are on as well. And so to move into this conversation, we all really come from like lineages of people that hold histories that are deeply intertwined with our own. And before we begin our panel discussion this morning, Sandra is going to lead us through a brief opening to remind us of the vastness that came before us, and also how our families and our chosen families help to shape us into who we are. So I will pass it over to you, Sandra, to lead us through ancestry math.
Thanks, Jenna. So yeah, this little writing is called Ancestral Mathematics. It's not attributed to any particular author that I've been able to find. So if anybody knows who wrote it, feel free to put it in the chat. But my team and I, we've opened with this a few times, and it's just a really great way to set the conversation for today and give us something to think about really around the vastness of each of our ancestries. So here it goes. In order to be born, you needed 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 second great-grandparents, 32 third great-grandparents, 64 fourth great-grandparents, 128 fifth great-grandparents, 256 sixth great-grandparents, 512 seventh great-grandparents, 1,024 8th great-grandparents, 2,048 ninth great-grandparents. For you to be born today from 12 previous generations, you needed a total of 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. Think for a moment, how many struggles, how many battles, how many difficulties, how much sadness, how much happiness, how many love stories, how many expressions of hope for the future did your ancestors have to undergo for you to exist in this present moment? And with that, I will pass it back over to Jenna to get us started.
Yeah, so we are now going to turn things over to our panelists. Sandra and I will stop talking and just be asking some questions. So we have a few questions that we've come up with for our panelists. And then we also would love to really give space at the end for you all in our audience, which it looks like you all are writing in from a bunch of different places. And we love to hear from you all later on. So please write in our chat and in our Q&A box. We have a lovely coworker named Nadrat who's going to be keeping track of everything in the chat and the Q&A to make sure that we don't miss some of the questions that you all have. So we're going to start with you, Jan, actually, and ask you the first question. And you both can answer both questions. But the first question is, how do you define intergenerational healing? And can you describe the intergenerational healing work that you have engaged in personally and with your community? And you can also feel free to add anything else that you would like us to know about you, or anything else you want to share with us about yourself or your community. And I will pass it over to you, Jan.
Thank you so much for having me today. And thank you so much for Ancestral Mathematics at Community Healing Network. We pay homage to the ancestors. They are a very important part of what we do. And just a little bit of quick math, if each of us have 4,094 ancestors, a total that is joining all of us today is 204,700 ancestors have showed up on our behalf today. All of their struggles, all of their battles, all of their love stories are here with us. Thank you so much for acknowledging the ancestors. It's an important part of what we do. And as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, somebody told a lie one day that made everything Black ugly and evil. The work we do at Community Healing Network is to confront that lie every day. We defy the lie of white superiority and Black inferiority and embrace the truth of Black humanity. That lie has infected everything. The construct of racism, which is not based on anything real, has determined that white people are at the top of the human race hierarchy and Black people are at the bottom. We work multi-generationally with young adults to elders on confronting that lie that was cast so many hundreds of years ago. In order to heal intergenerationally, we must look at the history that got us here. That lie that Black people can be treated as less than human is at the root of our mission at Community Healing Network. To mobilize Black people across the African diaspora to heal from the trauma caused by centuries of anti-Black racism, to free ourselves of toxic stereotypes, and to reclaim our dignity and humanity as people of African ancestry is what we do, which is interconnectedness. Our vision is a world in which all Black people have moved beyond surviving to flourishing and are enjoying life in all of its fullness, body, mind, and spirit. So at Community Healing Network, we work intergenerationally with healing by identifying that lie, by teaching about that lie, how that lie happened, and deconstructing that lie so that we may all flourish. That lie hurts all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jan. I'm going to pass it over to you, Terrancé. Just the same question, and let me know if you want me to repeat it for you as well.
First, I want to thank you all for having me here. It is an honor to our ancestors. It is an honor to everyone who has invited me here and to those who are all attending, and to my beautiful sister, to my queen who has just beautifully articulated, Ms. Berger, I believe it is your name, who has beautifully and heartfeltly just articulated and done that math. I am not a math major, but you added that up quick and added that up. Very impressive. I'll add that all right. Yeah, but she caught on to that, and that was so beautifully articulated and done. And I echo everything that she said too as well. But just defining, and I wish one thing before I say that, like what my definition of the intergenerational healing is to say that I don't know. I never met my grandfather. On my mother's side, I never met my grandfather nor my grandmother. On my father's side, I only met my grandmother, didn't have a relationship with her really, but I don't know any of my ancestors. I don't know any of my roots. I've heard a little bit about my great-great-grandfather. I'm named after my grandfather, but I never had a chance to ever meet him at all. So I know absolutely nothing about my original roots at all. I do have a slave name though. My last name belongs to a slave owner. So my first name is Terrancé. I was named after my uncle who was murdered on the day that I was born. But besides any part of my roots, my history, the truth, that's a blank. That is a blank there. And what I work towards with healing the intergenerational harm, that harm that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation, is to take it into another direction and to reverse that, to go from harm and to go healing. So we could start a whole nother cycle, a whole nother generation of not those who have been victims, not those who are just survivors, but those who are thrivers, those new kings and queens. And we return back to our roots and we create a whole nother world. Those who are like me, who do not know your roots, who do not know where you're from, who have not had the pleasure nor the privilege to sit with your ancestors, to know your essence. You create a whole nother essence. That blank space that may have been gone, you now fill it in. You fill that in, and you create your new generation. Stop the old one, reverse it, and go into a whole nother different direction. So that intergenerational healing, it begins with you personally and going in a whole direction from the harm that was previously created. But thank you.
Thank you both so much. Really, really powerful words for all of us to think about. We really appreciate it. And we're gonna go in the direction of what is so very much at the heart of all of these conversations, which is restorative justice. And so I'll begin with just a brief comment on RJ, and that is that restorative justice is about relationships, how you create them, maintain them, and mend them. It's based on the philosophy that we're all interconnected, that we live in relationship with one another, and that our actions impact each other. Grounded in this idea of interconnectedness, restorative justice is able to provide an alternative way of addressing wrongdoing. Wrongdoing is seen as a damaged relationship, a wound in the community, a tear in the web of relationships. Because we are all interconnected, a wrongdoing ripples out to disrupt the whole web. A harm to one is a harm to all. Given this definition, what do you see as the relationship between restorative justice and intergenerational healing? And I will pass it to you, Jan, to begin.
Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African concept that means I am because we are. It is a relational way of being that means I would not be here or know myself if it were not for my people, my community. If one holds the belief that they are their community, harm is less likely to happen. At Community Healing Network, we hold Ubuntu healing circles in which we share joys and triumphs, discuss issues, and most of all, rely on each other. We have rapid response Ubuntu healing circles that help the community in response to tragedies such as Buffalo, shootings such that we just had in Chicago. We are each other's medicine, and without my people, I am no one, as our sibling Terrancé said, that he was named after a beloved uncle murdered on the day that he was born. That is interconnectedness. That is, I am because we are. That is that intergenerational connection of healing. And if a tear happens, we resolve it communally. The young people we engage with consistently say how they wish they knew this earlier, how the lie of white superiority and Black inferiority has shaped their self-perception. The lie is the instrument, the vector, the root cause, the thing we have to get rid of to deal with systemic anti-Blackness. The lie is the thread that runs through everything. The specific intergenerational healing from the lie, freedom from the lie is an essential foundation for optimal Black wellness. By practicing Ubuntu within generations, we hold each other accountable and counteract the lie, which is also at the heart of restorative justice. How do we maintain relationships? How do we connect to one another so that we are each other's community, so that we have respect and live from the Ubuntu principle of I am because we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jan. Yeah, Terrancé, please, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So restorative justice and working with the intergenerational healing within the community. And how do we restore that? How do we tie them both together? How do we acknowledge that it is in existence of what's going on? When we work with our youth, we're talking about restorative justice when there has been an harm, and I work with the system that I work with now. So we work with youth and we work with the people that have been harmed and a harm that has gone through the community. Well, a lot of our youth do not understand that the harm that they are perpetrating or the offense, quote unquote, that they are committing is not just off of a coincidence. It's not just because you're going out here committing an act. A lot of them don't know. So take, for instance, if a child that has been abused has experienced the trauma at home and has been abused and has witnessed maybe their mother being abused, and they go out in the community and they take that anger out on someone else, and they continue that harm from the house onto the community, acting out of the trauma, not understanding that this has been passed down to me. I've learned this in my home. I've learned this in my home. And if they had a conversation with their mother, probably was like, my mother was abused and her mother was abused. And it goes back from generation to generation to generation. And if he probably asked his father, who probably isn't there, who probably is incarcerated, who maybe went out and committed a certain act of harm or violence, he would go and say, well, I seen my father do it, and my father do it, and my uncle did. And it was all generationally connected and passed down. And all this harm has went from one generation to another generation to another generation, another generation. And now that young child is going out here and don't know that his behavior has been inherited through learned behavior and has maybe psychologically and biologically have been passed down through that trauma. And so instead of coming and taking the child and incarcerating that child behind the act and punishing them and being hard on that child, we educate the child. So let's restore you. Let's get to the root cause of why you did do it. Why did you commit the harm? Instead of calling the police on you or, just ostracizing you and beating you up, that's not restorative justice. That's not restoring that child. That's not breaking the cycle to where you don't go on and commit the harm. Because like they say, hurt people. So let's, and then I heard a brother beautifully say, well, if hurt people, then heal people can heal people. So let's heal that youth. Let's start, let's stop that. Let's stop that right here. Let it stop with you. Let's restore you. Let's get to the root cause. And then let's work on bringing some healing, some education, give you some tools to not resort to violence. And then we're going to change that. We're going to restore that We're going to restore that harm, repair that community, not ostracize that youth. The community going to come. We're going to love the youth. We're going to love the youth to wholeness. And then that cycle going to start right there, where you stopping it, the harm perpetuating from another generation to another generation.
Thank you so much, Terrancé. And I just want to mention that in the chat, Mariana just notified us that closed captioning is now enabled for folks that were looking for it. Thank you so much, both of you, for the gifts that you just shared with us, and the connections that both of you brought. I think what you were just talking about, Terrancé, kind of leads into this next question so well, because it really is about how do you hold the healing and the hurt, because it's all happening together. And so I'll just ask the question that you so beautifully transitioned us into, that how do you grapple with the fact that harm is an ongoing experience right now alongside the healing work that you all do in both restorative justice and also with intergenerational healing context, especially given the reality of white supremacy and how pervasive it is in communities, and the perpetuation of unaddressed structural and historical oppression in the United States. There is so much harm happening, and we can do this healing work. So how do you kind of grapple with those things happening alongside one another? And I will start with you. Yeah, I'll start with you, Jan. I know we've been starting with you. I was like, should we switch it up this time? But I went back to starting with you.
Well, I think you're so correct, Jenna. Terrancé really transitioned us beautifully, with hurt people, and how we work with that at Community Healing Network is Sabona. It means we see you in the deepest sense possible. We see you beyond the walls that you have put up and the masks that you have put on. Sabona means that we see who the person is beyond all of the hurt and the pain, for who they really are, who they really want to be, and how they really want to act. This ability to be with each other and see beyond how the lie has affected us negates the defensiveness and aggressiveness of harm, yielding to grace, acceptance, and empathy. At CHN, Sabona is practiced by listening, observing, valuing, encouraging, and empathizing. It is the core of empathy. And empathy is that necessity to navigate harm, to grapple with harm as an ongoing experience. Empathy for the person that may have transgressed, and working with them to see the harm through an empathetic lens, through Sabona, through really seeing them, to be able to have that person really see the person that has been harmed. So thank you so much, Terrancé, for that beautiful segue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan, for that share, and teaching that maybe some of us in the audience have known, and maybe some of us it's completely new to. So I really appreciate you bringing that in. Terrancé, I will shift it over to you. How do you grapple with the ongoingness of harm alongside the ongoingness of this healing, which you were talking about, also all the generations that are to come after us. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. And my beautiful sister, Ms. Berger, thank you for always articulating beautifully your expressions. While I'm learning, when you educate me at the same time, like, well, let me get back these words. Let me ask you about these words. I can learn this language too. Thank you very much. But to be honest with you, and I'm very, very honest person and transparent person, it's a struggle. Like it really is. It's a struggle at the same time, but without no struggle, there is no progress. Without struggle, there is no progress. So to work along side by side with the systems that has created the harm, at the same time working to heal the harm, disrupting systems and healing systems at the same time, It's kind of difficult, but at the same time, it gives you your why. It keeps you focused. It really do. It keeps you focused and it makes you want to work harder. Because when I'm going in these inner cities and I'm right in the heart of the Black concentrated poverty, and I'm working with these youth who don't understand that your mother just didn't end up on welfare accidentally. Like this was a system that was put in place way before you was ever born. When we're working with these youth who struggle with their reading skills and math skills and are behind in school and going to these school systems that are just pushing kids from schools to prison, and they're still getting like the quality that poor quality of education. The quality of education is very poor, but they don't understand it was designed like this. Young Black child, you was never supposed to read. You was never, there was systems put in place, Jim Crow laws. Oh, do you know about Brown versus Board of Education? Do you know about the struggles that were put in place just for you to get an opportunity to become somebody in life, but you still living in this hundreds of years later, generations and generations later, and you still in poverty. Your school systems are still not set up for you to see. They don't want you educated about your history. And while I'm striving to educate the youth about it and open their eyes and enlighten them to break these generational cycles and to get the pushback from some of these systems and the legislators who don't want to acknowledge the harm. We're fighting to get bills passed that's going to disrupt these systems and create new systems. We're still with policies that have been put in place that are racially motivated and trying to disrupt them, which to still live in the United States where the 13th Amendment, that did not abolish slavery, but just took it on another form and covered it up. And to see that we're dealing with mass incarceration, and which is modern day slavery, and then trying to break those cycles of incarceration from our youth, that they don't fall into the traps, but constantly seeing people passing bills that's gonna keep people incarcerated while we trying to disrupt them and bring freedom and bring restorative justice and give a new form of incarceration. And you steady passing bills that's going to incarcerate people at a mass runner rate that is racially motivated. No, sometimes it is frustrating. It is very struggling, but it gives us our why. It motivates us. It makes us stay passionate because it is a fight, but it is a fight worth fighting for. It is a fight worth fighting for, and it's going to test our hearts. It's going to test our faith. It's going to test our resilience, but we got to be built for this. Our ancestors was built for this. The civil rights leaders that came before us, they opened doors for us. So this generation cannot afford to get slack, lazy, or not carry on the spirit of their ancestors. So no, this motivates us. Yes, it is challenging at times, but yes, we carry on that spirit and we're not giving up, just as what is that. So we bring them along with us in this fight for the hidden right along these systems, because we ain't going nowhere till they go somewhere. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jan and Terrancé. Everything you said just is so powerful, so on point. We aren't going anywhere. And this is such a fight worth fighting for. And one that I agree with you is in the hands of multiple generations. So that was just so beautifully put. I also want to uplift a comment that was in the chat by Marisol Flores. Just giving you all some props. Marisol writes, appreciate the mentioning of trauma and how it becomes encoded in our genes and the very fabric of our way of being and society. Our behaviors tell a story. So again, thank you both for uplifting that. And, I know we're going back and forth here with the questions, but what you both said was so powerful. I want to just also give you each an opportunity to respond to one another or just jump in and have a conversation before we go on to our next question, if you would like.
I would love to. I'm so moved, Terrancé, by what you said. I had to just hold myself and just rock just a little bit, because knowing your why is all important. That's one of the keys that we talk about in emotional emancipation circles. Knowing your why, the young adults in particular are responsive to knowing your why. And why is this happening? Why has this happened? How have we gotten here? The continent of Africa was literally divided up according to its riches and parceled out to countries across the world, enriching them and the US. And now look at the state of the continent today. And why does no one care? Where is that why? How do we get here? Where do we go from here? All of this, these are the systems that you speak of, Terrancé, so beautifully. And I just wanted to say a thank you. This is the lie that you are confronting. This is the lie that we work with every day at Community Healing Network. Thank you.
And thank you though, my sister, for I love the fact that you keep saying the lie. I keep the lie. The lie, it was when it was the truth. It was when I became aware and conscious to the truth of what was really going on that changed my life. That changed my life when I read the truth. Like I was incarcerated. So when I got a hold to the truth, it was when I got incarcerated on an illegal sentence. When I got in there and then God opened my eyes to the truth and I began to educate myself and I found out that I was not what people had called me. I was not that the color of my skin, it was not ugly. Like it wasn't something to be ashamed of. It wasn't, but it was a lie that was told. Like I always got teased by my nose and all of this stuff. But you know, I had to trace it back to my roots. Like this is my color. This is what my features. Embrace that. Those are lies that we are ugly. It's lies that, you know, we are monsters. It's lies that we only a percentage of a human being. These was all lies. It was a lie that, you know, we're dumb, we're uneducated, and we're this, and Black young males are the lies that society, that the media portrays, especially Black males. These was lies, and these was all systems that was put in place. You know, and when you live a lie, and when you live a lie, you repeat a lie. You repeat the lie and you spread the lie. And other people start believing the lie that this is the truth. And it's just like, you know, the scripture says that my people perish by a lack of knowledge, because we just don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, and what we don't know is hurting us and killing us. And when I read like even the Willie Lynch letter, whether it was true or not, I seen that. I seen that in the community, the lie, like, why is the dark skin fighting against the light skin? What happened to the family structure? I knew nothing about like the fact that the Black family structure, the unit was so broken. Why the Black woman don't trust the Black man? It was designed like that they broke up, they intentionally broke up the family unit. They had a system, a strategy for breaking that up. And we see that, you know, so I don't want to fight my other Black males no more. I don't want to fight them because I know that's design. It's meant for us to self-destruct, divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. When I found out, okay, you don't want me to read, I didn't know nothing about that. When I traced it out, okay, you wanted to keep me ignorant and it was laws against me reading, keep me uneducated. You know what I began to do? Read. Because I found out the truth, my sister. I found out we just wasn't slaves. We didn't come just from slave, like all my ancestors you want to show me roots, okay. Rosa Parks, I thank you. Martin Luther King, I thank you. My beautiful ancestors and our leaders. But when I found out I come from inventors, when I found out the broom, the dustpan, the elevator, and all this stuff, that people who look like me created this, that we are inventors, ingenuity, math scientists, that the language, the writing, the mathematics, the system, all that came from Egypt, from people that look like me. That empowered me. That empowered me. You know, it made me feel raw, my worth, my value, my self-esteem increased when I found out the truth, my sister. The truth literally set me free. So I thank you very much for always saying the lie. The lie. People walking around blind out of the lie, but the truth gives light and also a path that this generation can follow to lead them into a whole nother generation that can produce another history that we ain't seen before. Yes, thank you, my sister.
Absolutely, as Marcus Garvey said, and I hope I don't garble this quote, we have a beautiful history, and in the future we will create. No, we have a beautiful future, and we have a beautiful history, and in the future we will astonish the world.
Yes, beautiful.
So the second part of that is embrace the truth of Black humanity, which it sounds like you absolutely have done, and you're absolutely correct. We come from an ancient people of adventurers, of inventors, of healers, of medicine makers,
yes,
of every every walk of life. And our history has been destroyed by design. And what would be the benefit of breaking up the Black family? What would be the benefit of having Black women and Black men fight against each other as capitalism?
Yes, yes,
Imperialism and greed.
yes,
The divide and conquer, as you mentioned, is a very effective technique.
yes.
So thank you so much. I just wanted to holler back at that.
Thank you, my sister. Honor to you.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I really appreciate how much emphasis you both put on the lies and calling lies lies, you know, and also just the notion of systems not being broken, but being designed to oppress and designed to separate and designed to cause harm. There's just such an enormous amount of power in unlearning and then finding the truth in that unlearning that so many of us have to do as part of our healing journeys. So thank you for that. I'll move us into our next question, but this has been just such a beautiful discussion so far. So moving us to our next one, we want to know if there are additional considerations that need to be made that you all want to uplift when it comes to intergenerational healing work, especially as there is so much unraveling to be done around the healing process. And I will pass it over to you, Terrancé.
If I understand the question correctly, if I don't, if I go in a different way, correct me. Feel free. No, there's a lot of work to be done, as far as the bringing the awareness. You know, to get out there. Like, okay, so right now I'm working on building a whole operation that's working toward reversing these generational curses and cycles and systems and starting new ones. But the challenge is that we have been programmed a certain way. So how do we, like you said, how do we deprogram ourselves, educate ourselves, and go in a whole different direction as a people, because our people has lost hope. A lot of our people have lost hope, but they don't understand that it was meant for them to lose hope. And they don't understand that you can get out of this. Like, we can change this. The poverty that our people are still living in, we can change this. I hate to see it when I go to the communities and I see just generational poverty living in there. And the kids that I'm working with, like, they're living, and I still call them projects. I don't care if you want to call them government assistance now, whatever. No, it was a project. You use a form of, you put it straight into a project. Use an experiment. They tried something with you. It was designed for that. It's a project. That's all that you living in. But you there, your mother there, your grandmother was there, her mother was there. That system is still there. Incarceration, gangs, like we losing so many of our precious Black and brown lives to these generational systems, but they can be changed. But we need the help. We need our legislators on board. First, our people have to believe in themselves. We need legislators on board. We need business owners on board. We need teachers on board. We need everyone to collectively work together to, like, bring, that intergenerational healing, to bring the healing, because our people is broken. They are hurted. Our people have been traumatized, not getting no help, from the traumatization has birthed incarceration, has birthed homelessness, generations of homeless people. These cycles are continuing to go on and go on and go on and go on of healing. When we incarcerate, we continue the hurt. We continue the hurt. We don't heal our people. We don't heal them. So how do we collectively bring more people together? People that's with the religious sectors, faith leaders. Like, we need everybody on board to come on. Restorative justice. That's why I'm glad you're having this conversation. And restorative justice, restorative principle practices, because we're in schools now. Restorative practices are in schools now, working to bring these kids together that's fighting each other, that don't even understand why they're fighting each other. They're so angry and have so much generational anger, like, that's just built inside of them. But if everyone, would acknowledge the trauma, acknowledge the mental health issues that have stemmed from the trauma, and how to, in the place, the systems that ended us up where we are today. When we acknowledge that truth and we all come on board, we're going to a whole nother different direction. But we need more people on board. So that's the struggle. So my thing is, okay, we need help with that. So people that's attending right today, like, how do we all come together collectively, put aside these differences, work together on our healing, and we move forth? Because if we don't, the generation that we living in now and the other generation is going to be hopeless and helpless. You know, so how do we change that collectively and come together? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terrancé. Very, very well said. How about you, Jan?
I was so moved by what Terrancé was saying. I went scrambling looking for quotes because there were so many that ran through my mind. You know, again, I may garble them, but Harriet Tubman said, yes, I freed slaves and I would have freed more if only they knew they were enslaved. As Nina Simone says, slavery has never been abolished from America's way of thinking. And so, as Terrancé so adequately, you know, and perfectly mentioned, you know, that there is trauma, there is a mentality that we are breaking through. And this is exactly what we do at Community Healing Network with our emotional emancipation circles. They are 4-week intensives in which we confront the lie. We deconstruct the lie, we acknowledge it, and we turn it around and recognize the truth of our Black humanity. You know, no other people in the history of humankind has been compared to the existence of animals. We as Black people have been dehumanized, told that we are less than human when we are really one shared humanity. And so at our emotional emancipation 4-week intensives that are based on African psychology, we reframe who we are and how we want to be. Being together in this all Black space immediately allows the comfort of being together to take in the information. There is a settling with Black bodies that happens when we're all together. By doing this work, we learn resilience tools that assist in counteracting weathering, which is an effect of racism on our bodies. Weathering is much like being a house exposed to the elements, being snowed on, rained on, sun beating through. This is one of the reasons why Black people in particular have such health issues, is that we are like a house trying to stand strong in the midst of all of this assault, all of the snow, wind, weather, sun hitting our bodies. And so this is our empowering approach to Blackness. It's the first decision to live free from this lie that we have all been indoctrinated with. It hurts white people, it hurts Black people, it hurts Asian people, it hurts everyone. You know, white people have been conditioned to be afraid of Black people, and that triggers a whole other series of events that continues to harm Black people. And so, you know, this is exactly what we do at Community Healing Network, which is to confront this lie, to counteract it, and our own empowerment, our own freedom, our own resources, our own ability to free our minds, to free ourselves from this lie. So I encourage you all, if you can, for the Black people who are joining us today, to join us in our emotional emancipation circles, where we share these stories and we're deepening our understanding of these lies.
Thank you so much to both of you. And I just wanted to reflect that there's a parallel conversation happening in the chat. And I think something that was named both in the chat and in what all of you all were saying is this power in the collective and the collaborative and coming together for healing, and not as it is set up to be us like going off as individuals in this individualistic kind of teachings that we've been taught to be so individualistic and to be so separated from one another, and just the power that comes from being together and doing this work together is something that I think you all both really beautifully reflected, and was also reflected in the chat, because it's a lot to be up against. Jan, you mentioned tools. And so I was wondering from both of you if there were really, you've mentioned a few already, both of you have, but in addition to that, before we turn it over to the audience, I want to remind you to write your questions in the chat and in the Q&A so that we can invite you all into this conversation as well. But before we do that, are there any tools or resources, or you've given us a million teachings, but any more teachings that you would recommend to folks that are interested in taking on, whether it be their own journey through intergenerational healing work, or really that journey alongside their community and this work that does happen in collective power? And I will start with you, Terrancé.
Thank you very much. I would say when it first deal with individuals, not like me, like take for instance me. So, and I have I'm very transparent. I will put myself out there anytime. I didn't know that we're talking about intergenerational healing, these cycles and systems. And that is, that which has been passed down to you from generation to generation into generation, whether it's learned behavior, whether it is biological to as well. I acknowledge the fact that on both sides of my family, the males had a history of all being incarcerated. And alcoholism was on both sides of my family. I remember my mother telling me, when I was a little kid, she was like, don't drink, stay away from beer and drinking and all this, because genetically on both sides of your family, they're both alcoholics. Just being honest, just being very blunt with it. And she was like, so it might be easier for you to become an alcoholic because possibly it is in your genes. And I didn't understand that, but when I was young, I experienced a lot of abuse. I experienced a lot of abuse coming up and growing up in the inner cities, being raised in the projects around older males who drank and smoked and did drugs and put drugs in other kids' hands. I started drinking at a very young age, at the age of 12 years old. And it was easy for me to pick up another beer, to drink one time and then drink again and then drink again. So where when I was 16 years old, I can honestly say by the age of 16, I was an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic by the age of 60. I was drinking with people in their 30s and their 40s years old. Now that I'm looking back, I was like, how would you give a 12 and 13-year-old, all this alcohol and you should know better. But they were stuck in the hood and it would pass down to them. They were just teaching what had been taught to them and what had been taught to their people that came before them. And I fell right into that cycle of the alcoholism. I fell right into the cycle of the abuse. Like my father was a heroin addict, but I didn't do drugs, but I smoked marijuana, and these drugs, but it was all to deal with the abuse. But this abuse, the depression, I was a depressed child, but my mother had depression also too as well. And these were things that was passed down to me that I inherited already genetically in my environment. I inherited them through my environment that was just passed down. But once I became acknowledged to the truth, my sister, when it's supposed to lie, when I get it, I'm like, hold on, I'm finna break that. I can break it. But first I had to be aware of it, the fact that, hold up, these are generational cycles that I personally need to break. So whether I'm finna break them through my spirituality, I use spirituality to break some of these cycles. I use personal therapy to break these. I had to confront my issues and acknowledge the fact that I can conquer these and I can't overcome it because I want it better for myself. And I want it better for the next generation, my children and my children's children. I want to break this cycle. I don't want drug addicts. I don't want that to come from my seed that comes from me. I will replant this tree. I will plant another tree. This seed, no, I don't want it. I'm not trying to produce different fruit. No, I want to plant a whole nother tree, a whole nother lineage that will break these cycles and create different for my. So I personally invested in myself through my spirituality and other things. Now we're talking about the community as a whole. We're breaking these cycles and the community as a whole has a long way to go. We have a long way to go. We have a very, very long way to go, but we can get there. But that's going to come through more community leaders, more community activists, more people getting out there, going involved and getting involved with community engagement to pass out this information that my sister, Ms. Berger, is talking about. Pass out this information, talk about this information, keep these conversations going. Do not be quiet. Do not keep the gatherings together. Keep on mobilizing, keep on organizing, keep on shouting it, keep on preaching it, keep on teaching it. Go hard and say and put that truth out there till they start hearing it. The darkness will not get exposed without the light, So we got to continue to shed the light. We got to continue to be brighter than the darkness. And then we got to shout louder than the oppressors. You know, that's when I believe that we can see a real change individually and far as collectively with the community too as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Terrancé. Jan, I will pass it over to you.
One of our tools we use is our Tuesday emotional lunch break. And from noon to 1 Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays, we meet together for 60 minutes of rest and resilience and fun. And so we practice Ubuntu, being each other's medicine, being together. We have resilience tools that we go over that are grounded in African psychology. Our curriculum was co-created with the Association of Black Psychologists. And so there we take on the nervous system, the body, the mind. I love so much how Brother Terrancé said, spiritual healing, that we rely on our ancestors, we rely on our spirituality. It's a very important part of who we are communally and individually. We address our self-worth, our relationships in our communities. Essentially, we learn emotional wellness skills in our emotional emancipation circles in particular. And our Tuesday lunch breaks are a respite from the outside world. I'd like to say that we come and we dust the world off and be together, and we talk about a variety of different topics. Last week was animals and how we relate to the four-leggeds and how we share love between how we share love, how that's unconditional, what that connection is, how important that is. And so we give people time and space to talk. Today we talked about the earth, our connectedness to the earth and how much that has given us spiritually, literally food, everything associated with the planet, but also grounding techniques. So we did some grounding exercises and talked about what grounding is. How does one get grounding? What's the value of it? That's another one of our resilience tools. So I would say for anyone that's interested in moving this work forward, for Black-only spaces, if they're qualified, to join our Tuesday lunch breaks, our emotional emancipation circles. But in general, in terms of intergenerational healing, we are very fortunate because we have young adults and elders. We have a wide span of age ranges that we interact with consistently, and just that healing, just being able to pass wisdom on from one another, from slang from the younger people to wisdom from our elders, really assists in that healing. But in general, I would say for people to start where they are, what feels accessible to them, what's interesting to them, and to go in that direction, to know the why, as Terrancé so eloquently reminded us, know your why and go from there.
Wonderful. I feel like that should just be the guiding first step towards healing for anybody, is know your why and go from there. It's both home and instructions on how to get home.
It might be the first steps for anything.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Thank you both so much. We've come to the end of the questions that Jenna and I had for you all, so I'm really excited to move us into a Q&A. We've got some really great questions in the Q&A and in the chat, and folks in our audience, please keep them coming, and we'll get through as many as we can. We may not get through all of them, but we'll do our best. So with that, let's jump into this first question that came in towards the beginning of the conversation. And this question is, with the social media and all of the less savory outlets on the World Wide Web, how do you engage or pique the curiosity of the youth of today to want to know more of their ancestry? So I will open it up to whoever would like to respond to that first. And of course, either of you can always pass. But yeah, whoever would like to start us off.
I would say in some ways, social media makes it easier for people to access multi-generational healing. If it's something that they're called to, if it's something that they're interested in, just a couple of clicks away, there's a lot of information that can be found. I find that social media has been something that we've used to intentionally create community. Taking our emotional emancipation circles, our lunch breaks online. We have another future project in which we will be, building a larger community online, a multi-generational community, a village, so to speak, or a small city, if you will. So social media can be very beneficial. Like, we are having a good time using technology with spreading our mission, spreading our word about the lie, and really embracing the truth of Black humanity.
Yeah, I agree with her. Well, first you gotta make it interesting. You gotta make it interesting. So our youth, entertainment. So they, the youth, anything that's gonna entertain them, anything, I'll throw some music up in there. You gonna throw some music, get creative, make learning about your ancestors interesting into the youth. So just coming up with innovative ways, definitely, with the support group, the interest group, creating different focus groups on social media. Get some other youths. I would say get some other youths who are interested in learning about their history and their ancestors, and let them start it, because the youth will impact each other. They will impact each other. They will draw from one another. And once they see some other youth is out there doing it and it's cool to do it, and we want to know about our ancestors and where we other come, then it can become trending. It can become trending, but it's going to take another youth to kind of lead the way, or an influencer on social media to come and speak to the youth and get an interest. Like, where did you come from? Where did your ancestors come from? And make it interesting. Then I would think it would spark other curiosity within other youth to actually start doing the research themselves.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, and it's so important to talk about the next generation in this, and the generations to come, because what works for one doesn't work for all, and there is so much, obviously, as we've talked about, like, this is not the work of one generation. This is the work of ancestors. This is the work of future generations. Taking with them the stories, like someone mentioned in the chat, those stories. So yeah,
right.
With
that, as far as getting the youth more interested, just kind of like, so if you had somebody do like a challenge, how they be doing on social medias and stuff like that, because social media can be used for bad and good, but if they had like a challenge, like some people like, where did you come from, and stuff like that, with a youth challenge, like, where did you come from, where your ancestors, who was your ancestors, doing some on TikTok, like, who was your ancestors, doing some creative bam with the youth, and then just having people to post, other youth to post, well, this was my ancestor, who was your great grandma, and stuff like that. Then have people to do like a who was your ancestor challenge. Then I think you would see you be like, oh, I want to get in that challenge. Let me get in it. Let me find out, mama, where I come from. And that, then they'll make them curious so they can post. They love posting about themselves. Kids love posting the pictures about themselves, and they love taking selfies and comparing. So I think a good youth challenge, like, where did you come from, would be good to spark their interest in it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Someone asked, and you may have already touched on this, so if there's anything else you want to add, go for it, and if not, that's okay too. This was asked by, I think, someone anonymously. Is there a framework or something out there to help practitioners to do more of much needed intergenerational healing work to address trauma? Sorry if you all already addressed this. So I know you all have answered this in some capacity, but if there's anything else you want to add into that before we kind of shift into the next question.
So I personally, I don't know, there is, you can research it, like Google it. Like, if you go on to like YouTube right now, with our organization, that I work with, we do restorative justice work. So personally right now, I'm developing a whole operation to reverse those, acknowledge those intergenerational aspects to as well. But even doing my own personal research, I just went and Googled it. I looked it up, like intergenerational harm, intergenerational healing, and you can actually go on there and do some research, and it's all type of information out there that you can get the education and some different framework and different organizations out there that's actually doing that work. So it's just a matter of you going out there, Googling it and looking it up too.
I would mirror that and say, a nice little deep dive into epigenetics is always really interesting. Epigenetics really, how our environment has also helped shape our behavior, is extremely interesting to me right now. And the neuroscience behind it is a wonderful way to just have some things explained. Just briefly, there was an experiment done with mice, male mice only. And these male mice were exposed to the scent of cherry blossom. And every time they were exposed to the scent of cherry blossom, they were given a little shock or something that was distasteful for them. And so this group of male mice that had been experienced this unpleasant response to cherry blossom scent was then paired with female mice and then breeded. These female mice had no connection to cherry blossom scent whatsoever. They had never been exposed to it. They never had any negative associations with it. And so through the generations of breeding of this mice, what they found was that although these baby mice and 7 generations going forward had never been exposed to the scent of cherry blossom in their biological life, it was in the DNA of the males of their fathers that they began to react to this scent of cherry blossom. So although they had no direct exposure to it, once they were exposed to cherry blossom, they, I don't know what their specific behavior was, but it was obviously something that they, made them nervous, made them scared, something that they did not want to engage in. And so epigenetics is something that I think about a lot, because if we were to somehow magically end all the systemic racism that exists in our country today, erase all of the history that we have all lived through for thousands of years at this point, it would still take at least 7 generations going forward for the trauma and harm to recycle or cycle out of our DNA. So epigenetics is something that I would encourage people to look into.
Thank you so much for naming that. Yeah, I mean, our bodies carry a lot with us. And I from what you've shared about epigenetics and epigenetics in general is just so interesting to see what our bodies carry. And I'm curious just with that, both the trauma of our ancestors, and also I know Terrancé, you were talking about the spirit of your ancestors earlier and carrying that with you, and how those things are held in our body as well. Terrancé, you came off mute, so I wanted to pass it over to you to see if you had anything to add, and then Sandra might have another question too.
Oh no, I'm good. I think my system is right. I think epigenetics is definitely something to definitely look into. I've been doing my own research on that too as well. Like I was talking about the alcoholism and all this. So like I didn't know them people, but it was just that stuff that was just passed down. Depression, a lot of that stuff was like, I don't even know. Like I'm sitting up here, my mother be telling me sometime, like, you making this expression, you look just like your daddy when you made that expression. I've not been around my daddy. I don't even know him. Like you acting like just like your father. Like I have not been around him. I don't know this man. So, but you say I got his characteristics, it's in my DNA, that I'm responding in certain ways and certain actions, but I don't know the person. I don't know him. So, yeah. So, right. The epigenetic, I think they did a study with the survivors of the Holocaust too, on that too as well. So they went back and they did some studies of that too. Yeah. So, yeah, but definitely.
Yeah, thank you both. So many great things for folks to take deeper dives into that are so important. I wanted to ask a question from the chat that again would continue connecting intergenerational healing to restorative justice. And F. Cordero writes, I am totally on board with believing that understanding, accepting, realizing one's history along with education is key to transformative change. Yet besides just learning about our past connections across communities, please help shed light on how RJ principles specifically can help guide souls to see past their individual frontline struggles and engage the intergenerational trauma head on in a healing way, while also asking a harmed person to consider the history of a harmed doer. How to cross that chasm. So it's a big question. And again, whoever feels called to respond to it, please.
I'm going to kick that question to my brother Terrancé. I think that one's right up your alley.
Okay, so there was thank you, the one who had wrote the question, all of that. And so I'm gonna try to answer that question the best way I can. There was a lot that was in there, and thank you for including all that information, because that was a deep question, and I thank you for that. The RJ, and just to remember for those who are not familiar with RJ and what restorative justice does, is restorative justice works towards repairing the harm that has been committed within the community, within the person that's harmed and the person who has caused the harm, to repair that, to bring them together and reconcile that, and to bring justice in a healing way that benefits not just the person who has been harmed, but also the person who has caused the harm. Restorative justice gets to restorative justice, restorative practices, restorative, just it repairs what has been broken, what has been separated, okay? And when we're talking about restorative justice, we're talking about like getting to the root causes. What is the root causes? Why was the harm committed? Okay, and with restorative justice too as well, the person who has harmed, the person who was harmed has to like voluntarily get involved in the process. They have to volunteer. So they don't want, restorative justice is not like, I want to punish the person who has harmed me. I want to see them rot. I want to see them, blow up. I want to see, the worst thing happen to them, get rid of them, lock them up for the rest of their lives. There's nothing good that can ever come from that person. It's a person who already believes in, okay, yes, this harm has been committed to me, but I believe that that person who committed the harm can be saved. I do believe that they can make a difference in that aspect. And I want to participate in the healing process and in the restoring process of us both, and let us heal together. And let us heal together. So the person who has been harming there, they already are in the mindset of, I want to come in and participate in the healing and the restoring process of the youth or the person who has committed the harm against me. And those practices gets to the root causes. And when we can heal at the end of the process.
Oh, Terrancé, you're muted. There you go.
Okay. It stops the harm from continuing and to passing on. So it's not passing on anymore from generation to generation to generation. It has disrupted that. It has interrupted that. Hopefully, the person who has committed the harm, has got their healing, some education, knowledge, better tools to go forward in life and not repeat the same mistakes and heal their community. Now they're working towards restoring their community. Instead of taking, they're giving back. And then the person that was harmed, they got justice. They're working on healing. They're at peace with what has happened and in the process. And that hopefully, they can go forward with leaving that accident behind. Subconsciously, it's still going to be there, but not in a traumatizing way, in a restorative way now. I hope I answered that question, because there was a lot of it. So I hope I tried to touch on a few of those things.
Oh, I think you absolutely did. Thank you so much, Terrancé.
Okay, thank you.
And Jan, would you like to add anything to that? I know Terrancé had a beautiful response to that.
And I knew he would. I knew that it was his question. I love what he said. So no, I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you, my sister.
Thank you both.
So we have time for probably 2 more questions. So this question is from Xavier Graves. How, and I think it was put in the chat, how has the Black Lives Matter movement moved the conversation about an implementation of RJ and intergenerational healing? And Jan, we can start with you since Terrancé covered the last question.
I can jump in on this one. Yeah, I think that it has expanded the movement so much. I mean, unfortunately, it has taken tragic events for so many more people to get involved in the conversation of how do we defy this lie of white superiority, Black inferiority, embrace the truth of Black humanity. And so I think what we're looking at, what we are blessed to have right now is a global movement. And so, we do work globally, I want to reiterate, to continue to defy this lie of the dehumanization of Black people. And so I believe that Black Lives Matter, again, has mobilized so many more people to have these conversations, to do postings on social media, to be engaged in looking at how has this lie of white superiority and Black inferiority affected me personally? How has it affected my community? And is there something that I want to do about it? And if so, what is that thing that I want to do about it? So I think that we are looking at a brand new edge of Black consciousness. So there are Black people who are now more than ever creating intentional communities, who are now more than ever having conversations that used to be taboo. I would love to see Black people talking to each other more about how we harm each other, so that we are just as enraged when Black people do harm to one another as we are if there is some kind of crazy shooting, or if white people bring us harm. I would love to see us go in that direction. So I think that we are moving toward more people becoming so much more conscious. I mean, this conversation in and of itself is one of those examples of how the needle is moving, things are changing, and people are talking about systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and how we can deconstruct this, and what will it look like, how we make something different, new, and like what we'd like to say, a community healing network, mo better. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Terrancé, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a little bit, because my sister covered it, nailed it, loved it, absolutely all of it. Just, shout out to the Black Lives Matter movement in a positive way. Black Lives Matter get a lot of negative heat, so they try to twist Black Lives Matter, and it's always just saying, that we matter, and that's all that Black Lives Matter movement saying. They get just so much pushback and try to, put a negative rap to them, but that's not true. At all. So ain't nothing wrong with loving yourself and bringing acknowledgement that, yeah, we matter. We have not mattered in so long in so many different places. And it's time that we do matter. And I'm grateful to that, because now, even with the Black Lives Matter, with restorative justice is taking matters within our own hand, outside of policing. It's like now we're healing our own with community. It's like getting back to community and acknowledge that these systems has failed us. They have failed us. They have harmed us. They have hurt us. They are not for us. And it's time for us to be for ourselves. It's time for us to be in ourselves. We got to go in a totally different direction. So it kind of paving the way, but it's also, joining on board to that, to like, we as a community, we have to come together. And these systems that have hurt a lot of us dealing with restorative justice, they have been targeted towards the Black and brown race. That is, whether it's poverty, incarceration, unemployment, all of that stuff tied in together, the ones who hurting the most dealing with restorative justice. And again, a lot of that has to deal with incarceration rate. And with the incarceration, and the people who are incarcerated at the most harming rate are Black and brown people. All the Black and brown people, voter suppression, all of that stuff. So we got to restore the restorative justice, the big word justice. Who is hollering, we want justice? We talking about restorative justice. How do we get justice? How do we get fairness? Who is the population? Who is the people? Who is the nationality that's hollering, that's screaming, we want justice for our kids. We want justice for ourselves. We want justice in the economy. We only want fairness. We want equality. We want equity. Who is hollering that? But us. And Black Lives Matter have put themselves out there on the forefront. Put themselves out there on the forefront to be targeted and scrutinized, but they ain't went nowhere. So I appreciate everyone that is in a Black Lives Matter, in spite of what negatively been said about you. I understand where you're coming from. Me and my sister, and all us in a positive way, I believe we do. We really understand the heart of the movement.
Thank you both so much. We were going to ask you one more question before closing out, but I did see a question come in the chat that I would love to add before we do ask that last question. And this is from Rita, who writes, how do you see this conversation about healing and intergenerational healing happening in prisons? So again, whoever would like to respond to that, please go ahead.
this is an area that we would love to do emotional emancipation circles work in. Because just as Terrancé mentioned, he never knew that he had been lied to, and I believe that there may be people who are behind walls and jails and institutions right now that don't understand that they've been lied to, that they've been tricked, that they've been hoodwinked. And so, by the blessing of our virtual reality now is that this is a population that we could affect. We are a small organization with a mighty message that does a lot of big work. And so for us, it would just be a matter of some time and attention to affect this population. But I believe it would be a wonderful learning and a wonderful healing for people, in jails and institutions right now, because it's information that they don't know. They don't know that they come from an ancient ancestry of kings and queens, of builders and innovators and adventurers. And knowing this, knowing that Black lives matter, knowing that we have been intentionally dehumanized, that we have been lied to, and this lie affects everyone, and how it lands on us, I think would be extremely healing and helpful to people that are incarcerated right now.
Thank you, Jan.
Wow. I mean, yes, my sister. I would love to see our program within every institution, my sister. It is so needed. I mean, and it hits home for me. That question really is emotional, even when I think about that. Even when I think about that, when I go back and I think about the lives that I left, I was in a facility, like I said, where there was over 3,000 of us in there. 85% of them was Black males, 65% was up under the age of 30 years old. And when you seen the father in one cell, you seen the son in the other cell, you seen the brother in the other cell, and then across the hall was the nephew, and then you just seen all of that. It's so much. It's just so much of them, and you sit and listen to the stories. Like my father, he was in prison. I don't know my father, but he was in prison, and my father did this, and my uncle, my brother, all that harm, and the freedom that the truth brings. There's a lot of people in prison who feel like they're not worth nothing. The guilt, the shame, the dehumanization of those who are in prison, who who society have thrown away, and that weighs on you mentally, your psychic. It's damaging. It damaged you. There's a lot of hurt people in prison, wounded, but the truth can heal. Like the truth can heal. These conversations can heal. Like the practices that my sister says that they do within their organization, consciousness of word, just the love, that can bring that generational. That's what it need to be, generational healing. Because let me tell you something, these men and women in prison, they got children. They have kids. These men in prison, they got 3, 4, 5, 6 different kids out there. And these are generations that's going to bring in another generation and they're following in the same footsteps. The same path as their mothers, the same path as their father. And if somebody don't awaken them to the truth, heal them and restore them, they're going to continue to pass down that hurt, pass down that harm, pass down that trauma to more. But in prisons where they're still, where they're in solitude right there, where they can just be one with themselves and one with their mind and their mentality, giving the right information to them, to have some people to come and heal them, give them tools to self-heal, to self-correct themselves and loving themselves and build themselves up. That would be life change. That would be world change. Do you know how many prisons there are in the world? It's over 2.3 million people incarcerated within the United States alone. Just think if those people got healing. Just think if those people got the truth, that this system was designed to incarcerate you and it's all about capitalism, money, but you really are beautiful. When somebody told me one time, for the first time, that I was the glory of God, this woman came in prison. She told me that was the first time all my life I would be called nothing, stupid, dumb. You ain't nothing but a nigga. And when they told me that someone said, you are the glory of God. You are not the events that happen to you. You are not a mistake. You may have committed a mistake, but you are not a mistake. All that stuff was passed down. When I was able to free myself from that, the liberation that came from that, I wouldn't be the man and person who I wouldn't be on this panel today if that truth didn't come into the prison and save me. I wouldn't be who I am today. So yes, it can be a life changing. It could be a generational life changing, have an impact on the prison systems, man, because they thrown away up in there. They're hurting and they're broken and they're dying in prison, and they are forgetting about. They're forgetting. They're dying. Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. And I'm glad that this last question was asked, because I think it's really important that that is not forgotten and that is brought into this conversation, because that is our community. And this last question, I think we've talked about how transformative this work is. And I know, Terrancé, you even used the word struggle about this work. This is also hard work. And so this last question is from Poet. And Poet asks, what are the top 3 ways you take care of yourself as you do this restorative / intergenerational healing work in your community? And we'll wrap up with that question. And whichever one of you feels called to answer first, feel free to jump in.
For me, I am constantly learning. I'm always listening to, some podcast or part of a community or taking a class, or there's so much information. It's a lifetime of learning that I'm trying to catch up on. And so for me, one of the ways I take care of myself is just learning more. And my mind can't even wrap around all the material that there is to learn. I also am very blessed to be able to spend time with friends, which is another way that I'm able to take care of myself and do a lot of walking. I have a very strong spiritual belief that I rely on daily, and that sustains me more than anything at all. So I would say those are the ways that I help take care of myself during this journey.
Oftentimes we don't, right? Oftentimes we don't take care of ourselves. We get caught up, and the last person we care about is ourselves. So it's a challenge for me sometimes, but I'll try to make it my priority to make sure I'm taking care of myself. Especially mental health is a big thing. It is people within this work, like it's a lot that we do take on. So one of the ways that I help myself is my spirituality is major for me. I don't apologize about my faith, my relationship with God, my relationship with Jesus, praying, prayer, just me constantly staying in prayer and listening with God and spending time with God to replenish me when I've given so much out, and when I'm tired and worn down. I still away, and I get away with my spirituality and talk with God and let God heal me and restore me and minister to me. I do that with God. Another thing with me is just getting away. Like I get away. Sometimes I just get away. I'm introverted, so I heal from within too, and I rise from within too, and just getting away in quiet moments, having that quiet meditation and self-reflecting with your own self is a time to get away. Whether it's 10 minutes in my car by myself, sometimes I just get away and be quiet. Just quiet. It's just get away and quiet, And then the last thing for me is very therapeutic. It's working out, exercise. So I go to the gym and I work out, and I take a lot of it out on the gym, and I release and I meditate, put on my music, and I, have fun with myself. It's just, God getting away and exercising. It helps. It's a stress reliever. It's a stress reliever for my therapeutic for me. Yes.
Thank you both so very much. This was just a really incredible and illuminating and powerful conversation. So much to think about and to ponder and to carry away with us. So just deep appreciation for you both on behalf of the RJ Project and Impact Justice, and of course coming from Jenna and myself especially. This was just really wonderful, and I was very honored to be here with both of you today, and to be able to join you for these 90 minutes, which I think will be gifts to so many of us for many hours, days, weeks, and months to come. So again, thank you both. And I'll pass it over to you, Jenna, for gratitude. And I know we've got 1 minute left. I know we do have a hand raised in the audience, but unfortunately we are out of time. Please feel free to email folks with more questions, and then we will send resources out that we've got to share. And again, thank you for everything. And yeah, have a beautiful day.
Nothing to add but gratitude. Thank you both so much for all the gifts that you shared with us this morning / afternoon. I know that I'm going to be taking it with me, and I have no doubt that all 33 people in this space have things that they can take with them as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all. God bless us to you all. Peace. But my sister Berger, let's connect, please. Somehow, if y'all can connect me where we'll get our information, please let's do it. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for having me here. Thank you everyone who's here today. Have a beautiful, blessed day.
Thank you. And we will send out all the information you all need about the speakers and how to get connected and all of that. So keep a lookout. It'll be coming your way.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Take care of
everyone.
yourselves and each other. Everyone.
All right, love, peace, and blessings. Bye.